review. Book one was all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Adoption Paradox, putting adoption in perspective. No other than Miss Jean Kelly Widner. Welcome, Miss Jean on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. So, I am an adopted person. I mean, I wrote a book about adoption. One would think I have an anchor to it. And so I am a domestic born adoptee. I was born here in the United States in 1965. And that was a time when our culture really didn't tolerate single mothers. And so, unfortunately, that was the circumstance with my birth mother. She was an 18-year-old unwed woman who had gotten pregnant with her boyfriend, and he didn't feel that he could support them and refused to marry her, unfortunately. And so she was sent away, as so many young women were at that time, to a maternity home. And so, even though she had been actually born and raised in North Dakota herself, she went to Washington State and had me in 1965 and relinquished me to adoption. And for the most part, I've had a good life. I was adopted by really nice people and raised in Washington State and grew up. And then, later in life, decided to look at some of the complexities of that. So that's kind of why I'm here and how I got here.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Jean. Thank you. And let's talk about your debut book. The title Adoption Paradox is powerful. What is the fundamental contradiction or tension at the heart of adoption that you seek to explore in this book?
Sure. Yeah. Adoption is complicated. Most people who are not affected by it really, see, oh, okay, there was a child that needed a home. You have people who wanted a child and maybe they had struggles with infertility and couldn't have their own, or maybe for whatever reason, felt like they wanted to potentially adopt. And so, child is adopted by family, family's a win, kids a win, everything's fine. And sometimes that scenario is an accurate portrayal, so to speak, but there's always more to this story. I call adoption a paradox because I still lost something. And as an adopted person, I am always both a blend of the people who created me and then the people who raised me. And so there are always going to be differences that most adoptees feel at various points in our lives. Someone did, for whatever reason, place us for adoption. How voluntary that was depends upon, the time and the era and the reasons, and there are a gazillion variables that, feed into that. And the paradox is, again, I can feel loved, I can feel wanted, I can feel happy and even grateful to good parents who are raising me and doing the job. And yet I can also wonder at or feel sometimes very acutely the losses and the fact that I've lost something. I don't have connection to my roots. I don't have connection to my cultural heritage. I don't have access to my original birth certificate, which means I also don't have access to my medical history. And so it is quite literally the paradox of all of that that I'm bringing to the fore in this book.
Interesting, Miss Jean. And how does your book challenge the simplistic win or lose or tragedy versus celebration narratives that often dominate the adoption conversation?
Sure. I mean, I want to talk about the process really because that's really what is in the driver's seat with this book. I interviewed nearly 100 people in the course of writing and developing the book. I interviewed people who were adopted domestically, transracially, internationally, people who were adopted from foster care. I interviewed relinquishing birth parents, both men and women. I also interviewed adoptive parents who had adopted domestically, internationally, transracially, and also just foster care parents, and then also, professionals who worked as consultants or adoption professionals within the field, a great number of mental health professionals who interact with adopted families in a variety of ways. And so the book really is a chorus of all of those voices and all of those diverse experiences, both wonderful and amazing and incredible experiences, and then also times when families have really struggled. And so I also, early on in the book, I knew I wanted to have all of this backed up with a great deal of research. I'd been inspired by some other books that I felt did a really good job of that. And so, what I did here in my area outside of Las Vegas is I hired two part time UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas students who were psychology majors or psychology adjacent, and had them help me amass a tremendous amount of resource. And again, my intention in creating this book was that everyone would get their say because, you know, adoption is made up of, if you will, what used to be called a triad. We've now expanded that to call it a constellation. But you have at its root three core orientations. You have the birth parents who, for whatever reason, as I said, are looking at needing to relinquish their child. Maybe they can't afford the child. Maybe there are other complications in their lives, but for whatever reason, they are making a decision to potentially place their child to be raised by others. You then, of course, have the adopting parents and whatever is motivating them that has brought them to the table. And then the third part of the triad is supposed to be me, right? The adoptee. And all of this is supposed to be happening for my benefit. And I believe that sometimes it is. And I don't get a say in all of this is happening around me and about me, but it's happening to me, but I'm not the one who's in the driver's seat. And there are long-term consequences to adoption. And so the book was written with the idea that I really did want to function as a conduit, as a reporter, as someone who is just simply sharing the wisdom and the experiences and the stories of other people from all of their various viewpoints who have lived with and been impacted by adoption in one way or another. And so everybody gets a deep dive, everybody gets their say, and then there's lots of interesting research and expertise to back up and again, just sort of bring, that very neutral credibility to it all.
Indeed, interesting, Miss Jane. A key paradox seems to be the coexistence of profound loss
Mhm.
with the capacity for profound love and attachment within adoptive family. How does your book guide readers to hold space for both of these truths at once?
Ah, oh, I'll let the reader judge how successful I am at that, but I think I've tried and am somewhat successful in sort of taking people by the hand, and I start first with the adoptee point of view. I open you up first to a little bit about me and sort of set the table. I also do take a look at the history of adoption, which is actually very old and very varied. But once we really start digging into, again, the psychological impact, the mental health impacts, I start first with the adoptee because this is all supposed to be for my benefit and it's all supposed to be for our welfare. That this is a necessary thing, then that all of this is for the good of the child. And what gets exposed in that is sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. And again, that experience is as diverse as the stars. It's I have so many interviews done with adoptees who said, "I felt loved, but I didn't necessarily feel like I belonged."
Mm.
And so you have, again, it's that dichotomy of the fact that I can feel loved and I am that adoptee myself. I'm so glad that I was raised by George and Marion Kelly, who made me a part of who I am. And yet I feel incredibly sad that I don't know this other woman who did carry me for 9 months, and I don't know what she went through because we haven't been able to have contact. And from this sort of old school adoption era where, everything was closed and practiced as a closed adoption, um, it it leaves me wondering. And if you also start to do modern research on trauma and pre-verbal trauma, there's actually a great deal of research that continues to emerge that says that separating an infant from its mother right after birth is inherently traumatizing. And it's traumatizing not just to the woman who is losing access to her child, but also to that infant, that we have a deep and abiding knowing of our mother. We have traded stem cells back and forth throughout the pregnancy. I know the sound of her voice. I know her gait. I know her smell. And you've now pulled me from her. But of course, as an infant, I don't know why. And I can't express that to anyone. And then how well that goes then in their new family. Whenever you have that new infant that is now a part of a new family, and how well they attach, how resilient their personality is. What are the dynamics of the family that they've been adopted into? You're a person, I'm a person. We all know families have stuff. People have stuff that they haven't processed through. And children always soak all of that up. And so it ends up being a much more complicated situation to unpack than, again, most people look at or are willing to see. And so I try to just bring people in, take you by the hand and walk you through, first and foremost, those consequences and those realities.
Miss Jean, such an empowering answer. And can you describe the loyalty bind that many adoptees navigate? The feeling of being caught between gratitude and love to the adoptive family and deep, often unspoken connection to the origin.
Yeah, it's difficult to try to explain. I will only speak for myself, I think, here. And I can, to a certain extent speak for those that I've interviewed, but I'd rather just keep this in first person. I can only say that my need to be loved and wanted, and as absurd as this sounds, kept by my raising parents, by the people who have adopted me and said, "You're ours. We've rewritten your birth certificate. Your birth certificate says you're ours." And I love them and I need them. And I'm also unwilling to do anything that will risk me falling outside of that very inner circle. I just will not do it. I will not talk to you. I will not tell you my true feelings or my wonderings or my imaginary thoughts about what my mother might look like, or why do I like to dance and my parents don't like to dance? Why am I physically different from them even though we look the same? Um, as an adult, I'd dearly love to know who gave me the jacked up knees because I have terrible knees, but I don't know my medical history, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and so that's the thing. It really does come down to these wonderings, large and small, right? I'm different from you. I like different things than you. Why? Wouldn't that be neat to know? And wouldn't that be interesting to grow up with that information alongside? Because what happens for a lot of adoptees, and here then I will go big picture, is we struggle a lot with identity formation because I feel then trapped. And so if I'm unwilling or feel unsafe speaking to the adults in my life who, again, even if they're amazing and wonderful human beings and amazing and wonderful parents, and I know they love me, it is an extremely frightening thing then to say to for a child to say to a parent, I'm wondering about these other really complicated emotions and I don't know what to do with them, because let us remember we're kids. And so that's the thing is I think this is where I hope my book can help other families, because adoptive parents need to be the ones who hold space. Adoptive parents need to be the ones who find the words, who open the door, who make absolutely certain that their child feels completely safe coming to them. And that's really hard to do. And so, throughout the book, one of the things that I recommend to no end, and so do so many other people that I interviewed in the book, it's like, if you are going to adopt a child, number one, you need to get very, very comfortable about communicating about the fact that you adopted a child. And in the modern era, most adoptions are open to some degree. And it's the parent's job to do this. I think that families can benefit to no end from counseling, and specifically counseling that is with an adoption competent therapist who is well versed in adoption issues and well versed in what preverbal trauma looks like, walks like, talks like, all of the various ways that that can manifest, and then all the ways that parents can in fact be there to help their child. So, because remember, we don't stay children, we grow into teenagers and then we grow up. And I think, again, adoptive parents can go a long way towards setting a positive framework, but don't put the responsibility for figuring all of this out onto the shoulders of the child. It's your job. It's the adult's job.
Miss Jean, as an award winning author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Ah. Oh, I want to make adoption better for families. I know that's kind of big picture, right? Uh,
Yes.
but that really is what I want. I want. I think America does need to look at the ways that we adopt and how we create, um, how we build and create families in America. I think our child welfare industry has a lot of problems within it. My book touches on a lot of that, but really what I want to do is to change the narrative for how we converse about adoption, how we refer to it, and to ultimately help families who um, have this in their midst to be more successful and to, in particular, make things better for that adopted person who's, again, they're going to grow up, they're going to go out into the world and they're going to do their own things. And I think it's really, really important that we be the center of all of this.
Definitely, and good luck to your goals, Miss Jane. And
Mhm.
looking forward for more success.
Thank you.
And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be award-winning author like you?
um, write a lot, write more, and make sure that you have really, really good support in the way of critique groups and people who can really dig in and work with you on your work. And that's even before you find, hopefully, that great editor. I owe a lot to my editor and publisher over at Mystic Publishers, and Janelle Evans, my editor. I owe her a great deal. She really helped me drill down and refine this book. And so I cannot thank her or the critique group, Henderson Writers Group, shout out to them, for helping me craft something that I think is really worthwhile.
And thank you for that advice, Miss Jane. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I'm sorry, say that one again.
Can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Oh, without a doubt. The first one is a wonderful book written by Anne Fessler, The Girls Who Went Away, and that is specifically addressing the the birth mothers or first mothers that relinquished children in the era that I was born in 1965, which is called the baby scoop era. Um, there are others beyond that, but that was maybe one of the first ones for sure.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Jane. And to wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and my movie 101 review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Jane, if your book successfully changes the conversation around adoption, what would the new conversation sound like? What would be one thing people would start saying or understanding differently?
Hmm. I think that would have to be, again, that we're truly centering the adoptee and that we understand that an adopted child isn't someone who's rescued. An adopted child or person is someone that needs to be listened to first and foremost, take them at their word, and try to meet them where they are and fulfill what their actual needs are. Listen to them, don't put words in our mouths.
Hmm. Definitely. Miss Jean, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, you can learn more at adoptionparadox.com, or you can get my book on Amazon.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Jane Widner because if you support her for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Jane, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Maricon people, see you soon.